Alright, so we got the 228 spoilers, and of course the fight between Gojo and Sukuna is continuing, but let me quickly go over what had happened in the previous chapter, because we saw Gojo activating his domain expansion for the third time, but this time making it large enough to cover Sukuna's immense radius. But at the very end of the chapter, he shrunk it down to like almost the size of a basketball, or even smaller than that, as it says in this chapter, and that was like the cliffhanger. We didn't really know what was going on until now, because this chapter starts with someone saying that a small barrier would logically enhance the stability of a barrier, but it looks smaller than a basketball, and Kusakabe says impossible again in disbelief. But Mimi comments how many times we had it's impossible now. This is of course in reference to most of this fight, but mainly in the last chapter, where we saw Gojo and Sukuna do a lot of fantastical things that were essentially breaking the series, but to be honest, it kind of falls within the rules, mostly because we just haven't seen two people on this immense level of power go at it. So of course they're able to do things that other characters cannot, since at this point there's not really even like a close third to them, I guess, in levels of power, at least currently that we know of. Kusakabe argues that usually trapping yourself and your opponent inside a barrier with mass less than you would collapse, but Choso enlightens them, saying that Gojo is pulling off this feat by using his experience from being trapped inside the prison realm. So I guess this is explaining how Gojo is able to shrink them down without the mass collapsing on itself, as Kusakabe is saying here. It's just from Gojo being inside the prison realm, he somehow himself learned how to condense mass, similar to how it was in there. But also guys, some things in life are just objectively undeniably cool, like jetpacks, Bruce Lee, and giant mechs stomping around and blowing each other up. And that's why I want to talk about Mech Arena. Mech Arena is a new third-person mech shooter built from the ground up to promote friendly, competitive mobile play. It's free to play and offers multiple fast-paced game modes and focuses on short, high-intensity team PvP, with many game modes including Control Point Clash, 5v5 Deathmatch, and 2v2 Deathmatch, with more being added all the time. I personally really like Shadow. It's a sneaky ninja mech that's awesome at backstabbing, and its special ability Stealth means enemies can't auto-target it, making it really hard to hit and impossible to lock onto. They're also crazy fast. I also really like Zephyr, which is kind of like the opposite of Shadow because it's slow and not particularly powerful, but its power lies in its crazy powerful ability, which is Stun, because it's a 30-meter area of effect stun that can win team fights instantly. Also guys, in honor of Polarium's anniversary, their epic space-themed event, Solar Survivor is kicked off, and they've already revealed 3 new 5v5 maps: the legendary Scorpius mech with its onboard javelin array, as well as a new chain gun and fragment gun weapons. Later, they'll be bringing a powerful new missile weapon called the Disruptor and Chimera, a unique looking heavy duty pilot. They'll also be celebrating the 4th of July with their US community, bringing the Liberty skin for Onyx and Star Spangled skins for all mechs. So guys, it's completely free to play on Android, iOS, and PC right now, and you can use my personal link in the description or scan my QR code to get bonuses worth $30. We're talking about 1 Missile Rack 6, 1 Prodigy Crate, and 1 skin to help kickstart your game. And if you're quick, you can add me to your friends. We can play some matches together, so don't wait around. Kusakabe again starts saying how can they change the domain's conditions, especially barriers, because it's a mix of a lot of conditions. Higuruma Hanakari asks, really? To which Kusakabe answers that their domains are the exception, because their domains are built within their curse techniques. Mimi says that maybe Gojo wanted to try and cover Malevolent Shrine's whole range. Just then, Gojo's domain barrier starts to tremble heavily, and Yuta realizes that even Sukuna must have adjusted the shrine's range to small to enhance the output. And Angel says that if the barrier is destroyed, then Gojo is finished. So it seems like they're both shrinking it at the same time possibly, but with Sukuna enhancing his own output in the process, like, his slashing abilities that we've seen. But now it looks like Gojo's barrier is cracking, but I guess Sukuna is also fighting back from the inside. Unfortunately, we don't see what really goes down once this happens within sight of the actual two domains trapped within each other. We only really see the ending result here, where we see Gojo's domain barrier breaks once again. Like, yeah, Gojo's domain is breaking again for the third time, but like I said, we're kind of just seeing the end result of it, with whatever happened between Gojo and Sukuna inside the domain ends with Gojo's barrier breaking, but also Sukuna's shrine also starts to fall apart as well, and we see it break with Sukuna kind of just standing there, but he's damaged somehow, because it says that Sukuna is injured as his domain collapses due to the battle against Gojo. Like, Gojo, I don't know, maybe shot Red, or I don't know, like hit him in the chest or something, and he's like bleeding from the mouth too, but he's like smiling. He's like, ah, yeah, you got me. Hikari and all the other sorcerers are hyped, and just as Sukuna destroyed Gojo's barrier from outside, Gojo also gave enough damage so that Sukuna couldn't maintain his domain. So yeah, we're like back to square one again here. Higuruma says that since both Sukuna and Gojo's domain collapsed, now both of them can't use curse technique, and Maki adds that Gojo can heal his burnt out curse technique like he did last time, but Angel says that since Gojo showed that in front of Sukuna, now he could do it too. So this is wild. Sukuna is pretty much Garo from One Punch Man now. Like, Garo had a very similar ability to that, and it makes sense because, Sukuna is a beast. But I think more so his beastliness comes from insane muscle memory and just talent and adaptability. Because what they're referencing here, of course, is coming from the previous chapter where we found out that Gojo healed his own burnt out curse technique. Because, as it says here, after you use your domain, you have like a period of time where you just can't use your curse technique because it's quote unquote burned out. But Gojo apparently figured out that you can just heal it with reverse curse technique. Like, he just stopped healing his own physical body from taking the slashes from Sukuna and healed his curse technique in the process, which is insane. Like, we didn't know that was a thing, but it turns out that, yeah, now it is a thing, and Sukuna is implied to be doing it as well, because, he just saw Gojo do it once, or at least just learned the concept of it, which was enough. But going further into that, with just one time of Kenjaku helping Sukuna to split his soul into 20 cursed objects, Sukuna already learned how to do it himself, like how Sukuna transferred himself into Megumi. And just like that, Sukuna can also recover his burnt out curse technique with reverse curse technique because Gojo showed it. So that is wild. I think this is the narrator saying it, or Shoko, but we're getting way more insight into how Kenjaku makes sorcerers into cursed objects and then revives them later on. He's taking their soul and putting it into the piece of them, or their finger, or whatever other cursed objects there are besides Sukuna. I mean, we kind of assumed that was the case because, how else would it really be done? You would need to take their soul, which is essentially like, taking their intangible hard drive. But Kenjaku somehow figured this out, and I wonder if we ever do get the Heian era flashback that we'll see how Kenjaku discovered this. Because, manipulating the soul is different than just typical Jujutsu, obviously. It's like one of the most advanced, if not the most advanced thing that there is, soul manipulation, essentially. I mean, it was like a pretty big deal when Mahito was around because his curse technique allowed him to do it. It was like pretty much the only one. But Kenjaku somehow figured out how to do that and take your soul and put it into a cursed object, but apparently he was the only one, according to Angel. Like, no one else knew how he was able to do it. So that's why they all kind of just went along with his plan of being resurrected and being a part of the culling game and everything. But Sukuna now knows how to do it because he watched Kenjaku do it, and that's how he was able to transfer himself to Megumi. Like, he did it instantly on the fly, transferred himself to Yuji's pinky, ripped it off, forced it down Megumi's throat, and that was it. So just going to show that, yeah, he is just like Garo from One Punch Man. And yes, he is also in fact recovering his own burned out curse technique with reverse curse technique because Gojo showed him it. And I wonder if going forward, Gojo is going to be like, oh man, I can't do cool stuff anymore because Sukuna is just going to copy it. Gojo and Sukuna resume their battle battle again. Gojo kicks Sukuna and starts to wonder why Sukuna is not trying to use his curse technique other than Shrine. In fact, until his domain was destroyed, Gojo had led against Sukuna for almost 3 minutes. So he wonders, why is Sukuna taking such a risky option? And this is a great question. We've been wondering this ourselves. Like, why hasn't he been using the 10 Shadows against Gojo? Gojo tries to understand, why didn't Sukuna use the 10 Shadows curse technique or Mahoraga inside the domain? Gojo knows Sukuna has the memory of him and Megumi talking about Mahoraga. And just as he was wondering, Mahoraga's wheel clicks a turn and Gojo feels dizzy and gets a nosebleed, and that's where the chapter ends. Also, no break next week, which is incredible. But now we're seeing that somehow, possibly, I don't know, it's not fully being explained here, but Sukuna has had Mahoraga's Dharma Chakra wheel activated. Maybe it was invisible or something, or maybe he, I don't know, shrunk it. I don't know. We don't really know right now, but we did see him do something like this before when he was going against Yorozu, but it was visible, at least to the audience, above Sukuna's head. And I guess the implications in his fight against Yorozu when he was using it was that he was, I don't know, somehow getting Mahoraga's ability to adapt to things, because once Mahoraga like gets hit with something or whatever, his wheel will click and then he's adapted to it, and that ability or attack or whatever won't work on him again. And I assume the same thing is happening here with Sukuna, because it says, you know, the wheel, we actually see it here, it's like turning and clicking. So if that is the case, then this means that Sukuna is now impervious to Limitless, since in theory he has adapted to it using Mahoraga's ability. And if that is the case, then yeah, Gojo's screwed for sure. Now, I don't know if this means that he's fully adapted to Limitless as a whole. Like if Gojo uses purple or blue or red, then he can't be affected by it, because those are different applications of Limitless. I don't know how nuanced or broken Mahoraga's adaptability is here. Like if he just gets hit by the imaginary mass or the space manipulation of Limitless, is that enough, or is it just anything that goes into it? Not really sure. But it also could mean that Gojo might be forced to use his maximum technique, which I don't think he in theory should be, and adapted against. That would just be too good. But this might lead to Sukuna just straight up summoning Mahoraga here, which would be incredible. We do want to see Gojo take on Mahoraga, of course, because the last time Mahoraga came out, he just hit Yorozu's sphere with his sword, which is coated in positive curse energy, just once, and just destroyed her with it. Like it wasn't even a fight. Now, as for Gojo getting dizzy and getting nosebleed here, I don't think this has to do with Mahoraga or Sukuna. I think Gojo's just getting to his limit, because like we talked about, he used friggin' domain expansion 3 times in a row. The first time we've ever seen that in the series. We've never seen anybody just do it twice, but Gojo's doing it 3 times in the span of like 5 minutes. I don't know how long it's been. But then on top of that, he's constantly been using reverse curse technique, which apparently uses double the amount of cursed energy that like a normal technique would. Then he was also using Falling Blossom Emotion, Simple Domain, and also, you know, healing his burnt out curse technique as well. So yeah, for sure, Gojo has to be reaching his limit soon. Even he, you know, the Michael Jordan or the Kobe, whatever you want to address him as, LeBron, he has to be reaching his limit, even with the 6 eyes. Like, this is just too much for anyone. Well, maybe aside from Sukuna with 20 fingers and his true body, but that's a story for another time. But yeah, not looking good for Gojo, but we'll talk about this more once the full chapter drops, either Thursday or Friday. So subscribe if you haven't already, guys, and let me know what you think about this in the comments. Have a great day. I'll see you in the next one.